They always told me to stand behind the camera, not because I was good at it, but because, according to them, that's where someone like me belonged. Every holiday, birthday, vacation, and celebration ended the same way, with the family huddled together smiling in front of a lens, and me standing a few steps back, holding the camera, trying not to let the sting of rejection show on my face. "You're just not photogenic, sweetheart," my mother would say gently, as if that softened the blow. "We don't want to ruin the picture," my father once whispered, thinking I couldn't hear him. But I did. I heard everything. Please subscribe to our channel and tell me in comments from where are you watching this video. I was 12 the first time they asked me to sit out of a family portrait. I stood there in a brand new floral dress I had begged my mom to buy. I had even curled my hair. I remember thinking, maybe this time they'll say I'm beautiful. But instead, they arranged themselves in the frame like I didn't exist. My younger sister, Alina, beamed with her perfect teeth and symmetrical face, her golden hair falling just right, while my parents posed on either side of her. They looked like a painting. I looked like a smudge on the canvas they wished they could erase. At first, I believed them. I believed I was too ugly, too awkward, too forgettable. I started avoiding mirrors, deleting selfies before they could live long enough to see daylight, and walking with my head down through hallways full of kids who didn't notice me anyway. But deep down, something inside me refused to die. It didn't roar. It didn't scream. It whispered. A whisper that said, "What if they're wrong?" By the time I was 15, I had started experimenting with makeup, not the kind you wear to impress others, but the kind that transforms. I watched hours of tutorials late at night, learning how light and shadows could sculpt the face. I wasn't trying to look like someone else. I was trying to find the version of me that I thought might finally be worth being seen. I didn't post my photos. Not yet. They were mine. Secret proofs of a girl slowly learning to defy what she'd been told. The breakthrough came accidentally. A digital photography teacher at school asked us to submit a portfolio for the end-of-term exhibition. I didn't have a model. No one wanted to pose for the ugly girl, so I used myself. I painted my face like art, used dramatic lighting, and submitted the shots anonymously. When the day of the exhibit came, I watched students and teachers crowd around one of the displays, praising the composition, the emotion, the raw beauty. "Who's the model?" they kept asking. "She has such striking features." My cheeks burned. I didn't tell them it was me. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror longer than I ever had before, not looking for flaws, but searching for that same girl in the photographs. She was there, sharp eyes, confident expression, unafraid. I realized then that maybe my face had never been the problem. Maybe the problem was the way they saw it. At 17, I made a decision that changed everything. I applied to a modeling program in a nearby city. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't ask for permission. I borrowed money from a friend who believed in me more than my own family ever had. At the open call, I stood in a room full of tall, polished girls with legs like gazelles and smiles that could melt ice. I was shaking, but then a scout paused in front of me. He didn't ask about my height or my weight. He just looked me in the eye and said, "There's something unforgettable about your face." That was all it took. One photo shoot led to another. My first magazine cover came at 19. It wasn't Vogue. It wasn't Harper's. It was a smaller fashion zine in France. But it was mine. My name. My face. On the cover. I remember holding the issue in my hands and crying. Not because I had made it, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't want to hide. Back home, my parents barely acknowledged it. "That's nice," my father said, flipping through the pages like they were a grocery ad. "Don't let it get to your head," my mother added. "It's not real modeling." So I smiled and said nothing, because I knew something they didn't. This was just the beginning, and they were about to see my face everywhere. Fame doesn't come overnight, but when it does arrive, slow, then all at once, it changes everything. My early gigs were inconsistent. Sometimes I was paid in exposure, sometimes in actual cash, but I didn't care. Every photo that featured my face felt like a quiet rebellion. A shot fired back at every time my father told me I'd ruin the family picture. A strike against every cold look my mother gave when she cropped me out of candid shots at weddings, school events, even birthday cakes. I used to wonder what kind of parent deletes their child from memories. Now I understood. It wasn't about me. It was about their image, their story, their version of perfection. So, I built my own. At 21, I landed a major campaign with a luxury skincare brand. It wasn't because I had flawless skin. I didn't. It was because, as the creative director said, your eyes hold a story, one that makes people stop and listen. For the first time, people weren't just looking at me, they were seeing me. There's a difference. And when I looked into the camera, I poured every ounce of rejection and quiet rage into those lenses, not to seek pity, but to reclaim space, to say, I belong here. The magazines followed covers, features, interviews. They loved the transformation narrative. From rejected to revered, they called it. The girl once told she was too ugly to be photographed becomes the face of a generation. They ate it up, but they didn't know the whole story. They didn't know that even as I sat in velvet chairs on talk shows, with stylists fussing over me and photographers begging for just one more frame, I was still that little girl holding a camera in her trembling hands, desperate to be included in just one photo. Then came the twist I never expected. It was a warm afternoon in late spring when I got the call. My younger sister Alina was getting married. I hadn't seen her or my parents in nearly 5 years. The invitation was formal, impersonal. You are cordially invited to the wedding of... No mention of the past, no apology, just a request to attend like a stranger. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but a louder part, the one still hungry for something I never fully received, wanted to go. Not for them, but for me. I arrived in a quiet blue gown, no entourage, no cameras, no makeup artist, just me, the girl they once refused to let in front of the lens. I watched from the back as they posed for photos before the ceremony. My mother stood proudly between the bride and groom. My father adjusted Alina's veil. They all smiled so wide, like the picture-perfect family they'd always tried to be. Then my mother saw me. Her smile faltered. My father's gaze followed. And for a long second, silence stretched across the garden. I didn't flinch. I held their eyes with the same strength I had learned to carry in front of 1,000 camera flashes. My mother walked toward me, slowly, as if unsure whether I was real. You look different, she said finally. No, I said. I look exactly the same. You just never really looked at me. We didn't speak again that evening, but something shifted. That night, I left the wedding early and walked through a quiet street with my heels in one hand and tears in my eyes. Not sadness, not grief. Something else. Maybe it was closure. Weeks later, I did something bold. I pitched an idea to a major fashion publication, an editorial spread, but not just any spread. I wanted to feature people who had been told they were too ugly, too dark, too fat, too different to be seen. I wanted to put their faces on covers, to let their stories echo through pages the way mine had. The editor was skeptical. But eventually, she said yes. The issue was a hit. It shattered sales records. People didn't just see us, they connected with us. For the first time, beauty was being defined not by bone structure or symmetry or skin tone, but by truth. A month after the issue dropped, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a letter in my mother's handwriting. Short, shaky. I saw your magazine. I didn't recognize any of them, but I recognized myself in every page. I think I finally see you now. I'm sorry. I sat with that letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to call. I simply stared at the words. It wasn't the apology I had imagined as a child. It wasn't wrapped in hugs or overflowing with emotion. But it was real. And that was enough. Today, my face still graces covers. But more importantly, I've made space for faces that were once ignored, just like mine. I walk red carpets not to be seen, but to remind the world that beauty isn't a fixed mold. It's a spectrum, a rebellion. A story waiting to be told. I was once the girl erased from every family photo. Now, I'm the face they can't look away from. And every time my mother walks past a magazine stand, I know what she sees. Not just the daughter she once tried to crop out, but the woman she can never